we should begin shortly. Are we live streaming? Okay. Hope everyone had a good evening. We had a great evening with the TAs, and it was great to get together, and it's a reminder of how much they do to keep this board running. So really enjoyed it last night, and thank you for tolerating me for an evening. Speaking of TAs, we did want to, we know everyone is a volunteer here, and appreciate all the commitment to service in addition to your day job or jobs in many instances. We did want to recognize one TA who's been supporting this board and contributing in some way for now 25 years. So if Susan Jones is in the room, would you come up here? We have a little thing for you.
Yeah. 25 years of an absolute
I think that's how we all feel at times in most days. More good than bad, though, I hope. We really look forward to today's discussions. We have two topics to discuss with both the same hopeful outcome, which is approval, one of an exposure draft on audit evidence and one on a project proposal approval on sustainability assurance. So I'm going to turn it over to Sue to lead us on audit evidence.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks everybody for the feedback we've had so far. Obviously, our goal this morning is to approve the draft standards. So what I'm going to do is walk through the main changes that we have proposed to the ISA 500 revised and the changes to the proposed conforming and consequential amendments. Just to say there are no changes to the requirements in the standards. So I'm only going to be focusing on a few application material paragraphs. And there's only a few changes to the consequential and conforming amendments based on offline comments. I'm not going to point out minor editorial comments or changes to cross references and things like that. You've all had the papers, and hopefully you've had plenty of time to look at those. The changes are very largely in response to the comments that were raised at the board on Monday, unless I'll sort of highlight otherwise. And as we've noted in the head notes to the paper that you've got, the updated standard, the changes to the standard are marked from the clean version that we presented on Monday, and the changes to paragraphs 10 and A63 that we discussed on Wednesday are also included as clean. So if I just walk through the main changes in the standard, bear with us just so that you can, we can articulate the rationale. On A3, the first one there is changes made to the wording to address comments that audit procedures can be performed manually or by using automated tools and techniques. So I think hopefully we've made that clearer that the automated tools are not the procedures in themselves. There are other changes that we've made elsewhere in the document to align with the wording that we now have in paragraph A3, and I won't highlight those as we go. On A4, a sub-bullet was added here to, we've moved up the point that was previously in A32. I think it was Josephine who referenced the fact that the first sentence of A32 didn't really fit very well with, so we agreed and we've moved it up. What that means is that both those bullets are now examples of the use of automated tools and techniques in other ISAs that are relevant here. So I think that it highlights earlier in the standard the use of technology, which I know has been something other people have commented on as well. On A9, we proposed a minor change to the second bullet to address a concern that the guidance, as it was previously written, could suggest that the auditor always had to consider more than one information source in obtaining audit evidence. In A17, in the examples, there was concern about the use of the term may in the examples. and whether that was appropriate. We looked at that and reflected that, in fact, the last sentence of each of those first two bullets could be deleted, and the examples still support the point of the paragraph. So we thought that was a cleaner way to address that. On A23, there were revisions to clarify reference to inputs and data. We had a question around whether the inputs related to what the tool does and whether the data was part of the inputs. So we think that a change helps to distinguish between the understanding of data inputs and the understanding of the process steps. On A32, we discussed that earlier. We really relocated the earlier part of that paragraph, and then the remaining two sentences were changed to better align with the subject matter of the section, and also the example in ISA 315 revised. On A33, in response to Josephine's comment on Monday, we've proposed some changes to better align with the definition of audit sampling in ISA 530, and to reinforce the point that is made in the slightly earlier paragraph, that selecting specific items from a population is not audit sampling. On A42, we had a few board members had offline comments about the second example in relation to artificial intelligence. We worked with Danielle from the technology working group to help clarify the example, and changing it to refer to the use of machine learning technology, which is periodically updated to reflect changes in the inputs. Paragraph A43A is a new paragraph, which I affectionately refer to as the Julie paragraph, because it came from the suggestion, Julie, that you made, which was supported by a number of board members, to add guidance about the auditor exercising professional scepticism when information is received in a form that's different to what has been previously expected. I think the comment was originally in the context of automation bias, but our view was it would be helpful to the application material dealing with the form of the information. So the wording is consistent with the points in paragraph A19 and A43 that discuss biases and impediments to the exercise of professional scepticism. On A45, there were comments made to address, changes made to address some offline comments that the guidance might unduly infer that external information sources were not relevant or reliable. So we have clarified that and noted that ISA 540 references this particular piece of guidance. So I think we've addressed that point. On A49, we added back the reference to nature and extent of the auditor's evaluation in response to a comment at the board. We also added a reference to authenticity in the first example to address a comment, I think, Yosh, and during the CAG conversations as well, about whether the source of information is subject to the influence of management or a related party, and where there might be a risk of manipulation of that information. We considered the view, we felt that was covered by authenticity, and that was a way of addressing some of the concerns that had been raised. And then finally, on A85, there were some editorial changes to align with the conforming amendment in paragraph 27 of ISA 330 that arises from ISA 315 revised. So I appreciate that's been quite a fast run through, but you've hopefully all had an opportunity to look through the material, and we've addressed a few questions, I know, during the course of the morning. I'll then just move on quickly onto the conforming and consequential amendments in the updated version that you have. In ISA 505, paragraph 2, which is on page 15, if you're following, paragraph 1 was added, given the reference to ISA 500. Paragraph 2 was aligned with the wording in paragraph A13 of 500. And given the deletions of the bullets in paragraph 2, We then just relocated the first sentence to the of the former hanging paragraph, so just kind of tidying up the bringing the two paragraphs together, and the second sentence we felt was redundant. On ISA 530, Appendix 4, which is on page 19 of the conforming amendments, in response to an offline comment from a board member, we proposed to delete the last sentence of the guidance included in Appendix 4 in relation to sample selection methods. The board member noted that the guidance was confusing because it suggested that sampling could be used to test the entire population, which is almost the reverse of the definition of sampling. In ISA 540, as we noted earlier, paragraph A129 is linked to paragraph A45 in ISA 500. So the wording of the last sentence there was revised to be more consistent with paragraph A45. And then I think, no, not quite finally, A550, sorry, in ISA 550, paragraph A44 was revised based on an offline comment that we had from a board member. And in ISA 620, paragraph 9, which is on page 27, paragraph A9 was aligned with the revisions in proposed ISA 500 in relation to information intended to be used as evidence. So that's it, Tom and the board in relation to the changes that are proposed from what you've already seen. Tom, I'll hand back to you for any comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sue, and the task force and staff for updating that. I'll take comments, and if it's any comments, because we're getting to the point of approval, please be pretty slow and deliberate about pointing out the paragraph you're referring to, and even better, the page, so we could all follow along as well. Any comments on what Sue suggested? Isabel.
Yes, minor comment on A4 in ISA 500, first bullet, first sentence. Now, as it is written, we compare an automated tool and technique to an audit procedure. The first sentence says in the document, describe circumstances when an automatic tool and technique may be more effective than an audit manual procedure. So we suggest to rewrite this sentence and to say, describe circumstances where an audit procedure may be performed more effectively by using an automated tool and technique than manually. I have sent the proposed wording to Phil and you. It's because an automated tool and technique is not an audit procedure. It's a tool.
Thank you. Any reaction?
Yeah, Isabel, you referenced an audit manual procedure. I think what we've changed is it says it's more effective than an audit procedure performed manually. So I think we've tried very hard to emphasize that the technique is not the procedure, that the what we're talking about, automated and manual, are there. I don't know if any other board members felt the same, because it was certainly something that had cropped up from several people.
Josephine?
Yeah, no, I know. And I read it exactly as you read it, Sue, but she's right, because it's because we've tagged on automated tool and technique to an audit procedure. And so it does imply it's an audit procedure. So I think, though, Isabel's suggestion works quite well. But you might have to read it again, Isabel. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, Isabel, one more time for the record, and obviously you'll hand it in, but I think people are content with what you said.
So it's to replace the first sentence of the first bullet of A4, and it would say, describe circumstances where an audit procedure may be performed more effectively by using an automated tool and technique than manually.
people okay with that? Sounds good to me. Okay, any other comments? Does that mean you're happy to proceed with the formalities? Philly?
Thank you, Tom. Just to draw the board's attention that in the issues paper in agenda item 2, in paragraphs 35 and 36, we did set out the due process matters for the exposure draft stage of the project. So just for purposes of the record, I just want to confirm that in the task force's view, the significant matters identified as a result of the task force's deliberations from the beginning of this project have been presented in the issues papers presented to the board for discussion. And in the task force's views, there are no significant matters that have not been brought to the attention of the board. Also, the task force does not believe that a consultation paper, field testing, or roundtable is needed at this stage of the project. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Now, could I ask the board that they're ready to vote on approval of this exposure draft? Including, we're going to do it all at once, the whole package of conforming and consequential amendments. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to ask if anyone wishes to dissent to the issuance of the exposure draft. Let's, the record show no one has raised their hand. Next, I'd like to ask if anyone wants to abstain from the issuance of this exposure draft. Record should show no one raised their hand. So finally, that leaves us by process of elimination. Who would like to vote to approve the exposure draft? Warren has his digital hand up too. That's very modern of you, Warren. You're very sustainable too. You're sustaining your energy. So we have 18 votes in favor of the issuance of the exposure draft. With that, I'm going to congratulate Sue, the Audit Evidence Task Force, Phil and Dan, and the whole board on the approval of this exposure draft. This is, I think, a significant step forward. I really look forward to getting the feedback from this. I think it's sort of a foundational thing, particularly as we're exploring issues of technology going forward. We've always thought that was the case. And I really sort of turning it back to Sue. One thing I should note is we had some TAs who are not on the task force, but who were instrumental in this process. And that includes Susan and Jamie and Wolf and Sarah. And so thank you so much. And then from the staff perspective, we had a number of different staff contributing throughout the process as well. So anyway, I thank you to Sue. I turn it over to Sue. Do you have any comments? And then I'll ask Jim and Michael if they have any observations.
Thank you. Just thank you to the board for their support, obviously, and thank you to the task force. Tom, you listed the names, and I did that earlier on. So you know, it's been an evolving team, and thank you for the tolerance because we have done this almost exclusively virtually. So that has involved a fair amount of flexibility on everybody's part. So, but it also demonstrates that it can be done. So that's been a really good outcome. I think, you know, from the staff part, I've made sure to include Natalie in all the work that's been done as she dropped out at a certain point. But I was reminded earlier that Jasper helped us get to an even earlier point. So it's been a great team effort. Obviously, the last few months, Dan and Phil have taken an awful lot of the load. So particular thanks to them. And I think a lot of people know that this will be Phil's last meeting. Phil will be leaving the IAASB. So I particularly want to acknowledge all the work that you've done, Phil, and all the best for your future. So thank you. And we look forward to all your comments, obviously.
Michael.
Okay. Yes, very pleased to see this important project moving forward. And I think the task force has done an excellent job in responding to the comments that members made earlier in the week. So that's good. And it'll be interesting to see the reaction of the stakeholders as they review the exposure draft. And I would continue to encourage you to look for ways to speed up the timeline as you analyze the feedback that you get. And to remain attentive to the public interest issues that the PIOB has detailed, and make sure that that the end result satisfies those as best as possible.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Tom, and congratulations. The CAG was involved throughout the process, and we appreciate that you considered our input. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else you want to raise, Sue? Well, that's a great outcome. Thank you for that. My notes said that we were going to take a break, but I figure we just started, so we don't need a break right now. So, and I'm sure everyone's anxious to talk about sustainability assurance in the project proposal. So I'll give a few moments. Thank you, Phil, for your contributions to all of our work. I don't know if the staff want to come to the table for sustainability. Yeah, a few minutes. Let me make an administrative announcement while we're setting up for the next part. You may remember that we had held a date in October, either in the U.S. time zones, morning or evening meetings. We will not meet as a board in October. So those dates, that date, October 18th, you could release. So we will release those dates and not meet in October. Why don't I do some other administrative announcements while we're here? Just a reminder that our next in-person board meeting, since we're not meeting in October, will be on December 5th to 9th. We're working on the agenda still. A lot of it will be dictated by this week's activities and how much time allocation do. We're also conscious of the time we've been using, so we may create some opportunities for board interactions outside just the normal meeting hours too, in terms of technical topics, particularly as we move on to strategy. The next CAG session is going to be in March 7th and 8th, 2023. I believe that will be an in-person meeting in New York. Right now, we will obviously be in touch with people about their involvement with those sessions. You guys ready to go? Okay, still waiting. Okay, just built up the anticipation of this session right now. Okay, Lynn, over to you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the comments that have come in this morning and overnight. My intention this morning is to go through the major issues that we have changed into in the draft that you got last night, and at the same time identify any changes that were made that we're proposing to make this as a result of this morning's input. I don't intend to talk about the small edits people have given us. They're not changing the meaning of the project proposal. So we will make them, I can assure you, they are not things that need to be addressed at the board. So starting in terms of the beginning paragraphs, there was a robust discussion at the board about the difference between what this project proposal covers and what will happen in the future. What we decided to do was put everything up front. It may not be perfect, but we decided that to set the scene, we'd put up what we were going to do, what we might do in the future, and some exclusions in the first 3 paragraphs. The changes that people have suggested this morning to paragraph 2 are to include after in line 2 of paragraph 2 before similar specificity similar to the international standards on auditing. That was particularly because we don't want to say we're going to make another suite that's the same as the ISAs. What we are talking about is the specificity. So that was just being more precise then. And straight after that, we had will need to be developed over time. We've softened that because I don't think that's an absolute decision we can make at this time. So change that to may be developed over time. So small changes, but we think they have improved that paragraph. Another small change in paragraph 3 is to add immediate standard setting action or guidance, because that's the financial statements is an area that we could potentially do guidance on. So those are the changes proposed in paragraphs 2 and 3. In paragraph 6, we have tried to address the issue that we heard at the board meeting, is that in some places in the project proposal, we were undermining potentially 3,000 and suggesting that it might not be fit for purpose. That is not what we had intended. So we have changed the words in this paragraph and a number of others to make sure that we are clear that 3,000 and 3410 remain robust and appropriate. We have removed words like urgent need and demand for a timely standard in order to reinforce that and to make sure that we have the right tone in the project proposal. Moving on to paragraph 13, which is the project proposal, you will see that we have broken out C. It was connected to B, and we have moved the implementation by all assurance practitioners to a separate point. whilst we went through the document and removed many of the alls, we remain convinced that this particular all in 13B should remain. I've had some comments this morning that maybe we should delete it, but we believe it should remain. Paragraph 18B, there are a number of comments about potential scope creep. It's hard to address that in a project proposal. So, but the way we have tried to do it is by emphasising that the specificity will need to be commensurate with the overarching nature of the standard, and that we don't want to provide so much detail that it doesn't become an overarching standard, it becomes a something else. So we have here and in other places added that sentence. In I'm just keeping going down. In the table on paragraph 30, we have clarified the two-step process to make sure it wasn't repetitive and that it was clearer. Paragraph 31 is where we are addressing the other areas that many of you brought up that are not priorities, but to be clear that they will be covered, but with less specificity. So that was in direct reaction to your to the discussion. My apologies. Can we go back to paragraph 27? We had a suggestion this morning that if we move that paragraph to follow the first sentence of paragraph 26, it improves clarity. We agree with that. So our proposal is that we move 27 up into paragraph 26 and believe that the flow works well for that. A small note on paragraph 32, a number of people wanted us to change it to LCEs rather than SMEs. As this is a lift from the PIF, we don't propose to change that. That will remain. But the important point here is that we have added the scalability element of the PIF to the document. The final comment is one that we'd like some discussion on, and it is on paragraph 43. And we had one board member who wanted us to include the statement that that the standard should not provide as much detail as an assurance methodology would. Had a couple of comments this morning that we should delete that. So specifically the words are such as may be contained in assurance methodologies. So I have, if we could have some discussion on that, we would appreciate it, because we're not quite sure which way to go, because we've got two competing opinions. Natalie, have I got them all? Okay, thank you. So that's the major changes that we've made and the updates we have proposed from the comments this morning. Tom, back to you for any further input people have.
Okay, let's put that last question off to the end. And I'll welcome any comments on top of what you said. Personally, I just want to compliment the working group on the revised introduction. I think it sets the stage much better for those who are wondering why we're just focusing on an overarching standard. They understand that this is sort of the first step of a multi-phased approach that's likely to be quite continuous going forward. Anyone? Does that mean people are content? We'll get to 40. Wendy?
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Lynn. You addressed some of my overarching thoughts. We did not send in specific changes this morning. I liked your explanation on number 2, but I'm a little concerned we now have specificity twice in the same line. And my overarching concern on that paragraph initially was, are we trying to say similar to the ICEs or similar to the framework of the ICEs? It was because I walked away potentially as thinking in a non-assurance head that why do we need to be similar to the ICEs that I don't follow? So I think we're talking about framework. I don't know that we're talking about, I'm not really sure what we're talking about, but I'm thinking it might be a little, it might be a little bit too ISO-like. So I think we just need to play with that word, maybe the specificity word again. And I can look at that paragraph, but I had the overarching, but I didn't have a suggestion at the time. But when you put your suggestion in, I don't know that it made it more better. So you can noodle on that.
Well, potentially just get rid of IE, similar to the internationals. I think that may be slightly confusing.
Thank you, Tom. When in doubt, cut it out. Awesome. I also thought perhaps we needed to define or make sure it's clear that this is for non-assurance professionals, because let's look at 13C. And I think I'm pretty clear that that's intended 13C implemented by all assurance practitioners, but I could interpret that as just auditors who use ICEs the way that I read the project proposal. So I don't know if it needs to be defined or if it's defined earlier and I missed it.
Oh, sorry. It's defined under A1 subject, second line, all assurance practitioners, that is professional accountants and other professionals performing assurance engagements.
Okay.
So it's defined.
Okay, and then some, I select, okay, paragraph 6. I like what we added in on remain robust and appropriate. Do we need to also say and effective? Or is that, when we say robust and appropriate, does that imply effective?
I'd argue that it did, because it's hard to say it's appropriate if it's ineffective.
Don't disagree. And then on 2 other points, and I think this came up during the meeting, there are regulators who may have put precisely in ISA 3000, not ISA 3000, they might have put 3000 in their regulations. And, do we need some action that suggests we will liaise with regulators to make sure that practitioners don't come back and say, the regulations say I have to use 3000, which would need to be changed.
Yeah, I think that's out of our control as a task force or even as a board. So I think that's something that individual jurisdictions would have to deal with themselves.
Okay, thank you. And then my only other comment is in 30. We talk about the EER guidance, and I don't know if we wanted to include other national standards that are guidance that might be out there that we might be able to use. I think it came up, I think I might have brought it up and others might have brought it up during the session. And
Can you remind me of the paragraph?
30.
30, thank you.
It's 34, actually. Number 4.
So I worry a little bit about that. Wouldn't that really be opening the scope of your work effort in terms of this is almost goes to some of the concerns that Ado raised yesterday. Like the more we increase the function of where you're looking for materials to draw on for the standards, it potentially opens the Pandora box for the working group in drafting. So I guess I would be concerned if we sort of imply that we're going to look at national standards as another in addition to EER.
Or other available information. Are we precluded from looking at other materials?
No, and if we do have gaps, particularly for the priority areas, we will of course look for what other national standard setters have done or are doing. I think we consider it to be implicit in 5, and I'm not sure I want to make it explicit at present and keep expanding it, but can I just assure the board that in 5 we will, where we have gaps, look.
Excellent. And I'm sorry, I said 30 was last. 31, I might have missed it. Did you provide some information as to why we put 31 in?
It was in line with the significant discussion around other priorities and the offline comments we received of what people wanted and what we perceived as conclusion that we were not going to cover them. So it's a bit of belt and braces that these are all the elements that are going to be covered at a lower level of specificity than the priority areas. So that's what we were trying to do with that particular paragraph. And a number of our stakeholders have real issues with some of these. We wanted to be clear that we are going to cover them, just at a lower level of detail.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Josephine.
So there was lots of nodding and cheering about removing ISAs, but I would rather we did not do that. I'm really happy with 2. It got me comfortable from where I started with this, which is what I really believed we should have started with a series of standards at the beginning. So if we want to do anything, I think similar to the framework applied for international standards of auditing would work, which is also one of Wendy's suggestions, but I'd rather we not take it out altogether because everybody knows how that works. And otherwise we might get into, well, is that subject matter information series or is it elements of performing an engagement? So I just think it makes it crystal clear. So I'd rather we didn't take that out. Thank you.
Tom, we're going to need guidance from the board as we've got 2 proposals on the table. One is to add the word framework, one is to delete it. I personally can live with either one, so I'm happy to hear from the board as to what's the best way to proceed. Philly, is there a technical?
No, it's fine. I think the board just needs to make the decision, but I do think for clarity, maybe if we just read how sentence 1 will read in terms of the 2 options that you've put forward, Lynn.
Okay, option 1, the delete option would be the IAASB envisages that a suite of standards for assurance on sustainability reporting that provides more specificity than an overarching standard may need to be developed over time. Option 1. Option 2 is the IAASB envisages that a suite of standards for assurance on sustainability reporting that provide more specificity than an overarching standard that is similar to the framework of the international standards on auditing, IAASB, close brackets, may need to be developed over time.
So there is actually a key point. You switched will to may. I would say it has to be will, and unless we really don't think it is going to occur, like I think will implies. I don't know if it was unintentional.
I said that at the beginning that there was a proposal to change it to May, and I think this has just reminded people of that. So we've probably got two decisions now then. One is between the two options in terms of that bracketed part, and one is between may and will.
I think I'm firmly in the whole camp, but I think this is an example of where the passive voice has hurt us again. The IAASB, this is a sign of we're drafting at a table. We just said that the IAASB envisions that it will develop a suite of standards for assurance on sustainability reporting that provides more specificity than a single overarching standard over time. And then we could actually have a period. This is a framework similar to, I think we're jumbling a lot of things up in a confusing sentence.
And I also just think we need to remember, if we refer to the structure now, are we committing ourselves now to a structure? We don't know how this thing is going to evolve over time. All we are trying to say is that there will be a series of standards following this immediate action. That's really all we're trying to say.
Josephine, I just don't understand a little bit of why the structure itself matters. That could be determined. Isn't the more important thing that we're likely to have a suite of standards?
It is, but just for clarity, one could interpret that as subject matter information suite of standard, which is not what we mean. We mean very much the elements of the performance of an engagement. And people understand that ISAs are, that's how they're built. So it's really just making it easy for clarity. Otherwise, we have to say, not in terms of subject matter information, but in terms of engagement performance. And so we have to say what we mean by it. What is this series going to look like?
So is the solution maybe then to say in brackets, for example, standards that deal with individual elements of the assurance engagement? Okay.
I think that's better because it doesn't lock us into a framework.
Now that we've said this, we need to get some language on the public record. The IAASB envisages that it will, is this will? Are we agreed on its will? The IAASB envisages that it will develop over time a suite of standards for assurance of sustainability reporting that provide more specificity than an overarching standard. Then what's the parenthetical?
E.g., for example, standards that deal with individual elements of the assurance engagement.
You need to repeat that one more time. Julie?
I guess I'm a couple things. I think what you're suggesting, Willie, conflicts with 18 little a. Because 18 little a says that this overarching standard is going to encompass all elements of an assurance
Yeah,
engagement.
the
So then I
overarching
think-
standard will, but the suite of standards that follow that, in my mind, will either deal with individual elements of the assurance engagement or individual elements of the subject matter information, as we have under the ISAs.
But the overarching standard says it's encompassing all. So it's all or,
Yeah, but for example, it covers all elements of the assurance engagement. So for example, we will cover materiality, but on the maturity curve over 1 or 2 years, we might find we need a specific standard on materiality. And then we will develop a separate standard on materiality that builds on what's in the overarching standard.
right, I think it's the use of elements in two contexts that is,
Okay, is that what's
Potentially.
causing the confusion?
yeah. And my other comment was I'm not sure that the commitment that we're talking about is like we've made that commitment to a future suite of standards. So I will say I was one of the people that suggested to Lynn and her team about changing the will to something like a may.
Maybe the way to say it is will likely then. Okay, Isabel.
No, my point was when we say we'll deal with individual elements, we could say we'll deal in more details with individual elements.
You always need, when I need drafting advice, I always call on Isabel. She always solves the problem. I actually think will likely is much stronger than may. I do think we want to give a strong sense to the marketplace that in all probability, we are going to do that.
I almost feel that we're causing more confusion by some of the text that we're trying to add now than what we had originally, and the alternative of striking what we had in the parentheses probably is clearer to the reader. Otherwise, we'll have to do something way more because we're going down the path of adding a level of specificity, as Julie said, that we haven't really decided on yet, whether it's topics, it's process, or what actually will be developed in the future.
So
I'm having similar thoughts to Kai as this discussion is going on. I was comfortable with sort of either option of leaving the reference in or taking it out. The more we refine it, the more I'm feeling concerned that we could give the inference that we would be developing an entire suite of standards that could look like the suite we have for the ISAs, whereas actually we might have things that don't need to be addressed. You know, we might have something that has a subset or its particular things. So it feels like we're trying to get into too much specificity at the moment. So I think I'm more feeling like it would be better to be looser in the wording at this point as we then go through the prioritization exercise.
okay, let's just go back to the original proposal. By the way, Julie, by using will here, say we take the parenthetical out, the fact is it says envisions, it doesn't commit. So but it does give a likelihood that that's our current belief, that it's more likely than not. I think we should go back to the proposal about deleting the parenthetical with the will.
Okay, can we put will likely?
I'm fine with that too. Because it's envisions, it doesn't say commits.
No. Can I read the paragraph, therefore, how it would read? The IAASB envisages that a suite of standards for assurance on sustainability reporting that provide more specificity than an overarching standard will likely need to be developed over time.
Could people live with that? Other than
Josephine's
my
nodding too.
distaste for the passive voicing still is noted on the record, but it's fine by me for the sense of progress. Bill?
No.
I'm happy to be overruled, but I think it's absolutely obvious that we are going to develop further standards in accordance with the ISA suite. So I can see absolutely no reason for being cautious, but I don't want to hold up the process. I just want to make that comment.
Again, I think it's the question of the addition of likely here, but I'm with you, but I think for the sense of progress and the technicality is we are not approving a future suite right now. So I think we're given enough indication. I just think we could go ahead. So one more time, I think what you said is the IAASB envisions that a suite of standards for assurance and sustainability reporting that provide more specificity than an overarching standard will likely need to be developed over time. Are we all agreed on that? Okay, that's approved. That sentence been approved, not the project proposal. Should we go, any other comments on the draft project proposal? I think we need to go to that final issue that you raised, which was in paragraph 43. The addition such as may be contained in assurance methodologies. Anyone want to respond to that? Josephine?
So, I'm happy to help here, but I'd like to understand what the objection to the inclusion is, because I think that's actually quite a helpful inclusion.
There you go.
Thank you, Tom. Objection. I just don't know what it means. So, because every assurance methodology will be different for different firms. So I'm not sure what level of specificity we're talking about. And I don't think we should clarify what it's not, but just clarify that it has application material. And I would be fine just having a full stop there rather than articulating what is not going to be in the application material.
My reaction is it's a little strange that we're making reference to it here. We don't refer to assurance, but do we refer to it in any other materials? Like we could say that in almost in any standard we create or any project proposal, right? But maybe there's more that something I'm missing. Sue?
When I read it, I didn't feel it sat particularly well with the sentence, and it didn't necessarily go fantastically with the flow of the sentence. So I'd be happy to see it go. And as you say, I don't think it's something we reference elsewhere. I don't have a strong view. I'd be, but that was just as I was reading it.
But Lynn, we may be missing something here.
Yeah, can I explain maybe in other words what I think we were trying to get at? We, in our conversations with stakeholders and our reading, are concerned that people are wanting us to write the how-to guide of how to do an assurance engagement for on a sustainability report. We do principle-based standards that set requirements and provide some amplification of those requirements in the application material. We do not write the how-to guide or the methodology. What these few words are trying to do is to set that as a scope that we are not going as wide as your how-to methodology guide. So that's what the words are meant to be saying. Whether they're necessary or not is a matter of debate, obviously, but that's what we were trying to explain, and that's what I understood from the board members' comments. Thank you.
Let me just say, in reference to my remarks, I don't have any huge objection to having them in, though. And I think that's sort of what other people were saying too. But Kai?
Yeah, I think I could live with it also being in, but as I always said, it's hard to reading it. It may not tell what it is, and we're spending quite some time explaining what we're not doing. which feels a little bit on the negative side. But listening to your explanation, Lynn, saying it with more direct words as you did may be better and clear, and then we can avoid the reference to assurance methodologies. So you have some of that wording in the parentheses behind there, and then you're saying more directly, but it is setting the expectation, but it is on the negative side.
Len.
I didn't have any objection, but hearing your explanation, I actually object. I actually prefer taking it out because when we do a lot of outreach for whether it's ISAs, whether it's quality management, people always want us to add more guidance, playbook. So by having that here, it's kind of indicating we are doing that for assurance, for sustainability, but we maybe doing things for other projects. So I'm just saying maybe just eliminate that inconsistency, just take it out.
That would go to a saying that we said earlier, when in doubt, take it out. Bill?
Len, I think you just agreed, didn't you, with Lynn? Anyway, Lynn's summary, to my mind, is we never write methodologies. We write principles and application materials. So nothing's changed in my mind. I'm not sure, therefore, I guess I'm agreeing with Len why we need the words. But I don't care if the words go in, it won't matter because we never do it anyway. So I'm just want to get clarity around the group as we never write methodologies, and it's a little bit. We surely don't have to reinforce it now, but if we do, we do, and so be it.
Okay.
Can I make a proposal? We delete the words such as may be contained in audit assurance methodologies and go back to what we had.
Okay, people seem happy with that. Again, the golden rule, when in doubt, take it out.
In that case, Tom, unless there's any other comments, I think that is the project proposal.
Great. Okay, we're going, this one's a little simple. We don't need a due process review in front of it because this is about what our due process will be going forward. I'm going to ask who would like to vote in support of this project proposal. Raise your hands. Warren, oh, good. The digital hand came up. I was a little nervous over there, particularly since you're on this working group. We have 18 hands, so congratulations to everyone on that. This is, one of the formalities, because in reality, you were working towards the project proposal already, and we've made some great progress for that. So thank you to you and your team and to the staff involved and all those who assisted us on this project proposal and the work this week. I asked Lynn if you have any final closing comments on that before I turn to Jim and Michael for their perspectives.
I just want to say thank you to the team that put this together, the staff, the working group, and the board who've all worked together to put a project proposal together in less than 3 months, which I think is outstanding work and well done. And working group, welcome to being a task force.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
Okay, I'll just repeat what I said the other day. Excellent progress so far, and it's great to see that the proposal has been approved, and wish you good luck in moving forward as quickly as you can.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Tom, and somewhat repeat what I said earlier, but I appreciate that the IAASB has considered the CAG's comments as part of the process, and I think that we're in a pretty good spot at the end of this week. So thank you.
So I think as a gift to the team that put this together, my understanding is that you guys are meeting this afternoon. Is that
Oh, no, we're giving everybody 25 minutes off and start at 11.
Well, we love bearing gifts here, so that's a just reward. So thank you very much for continuing your hard work. So this actually brings us to the close of our sessions. I just want to thank everyone, board members, TAs, observers, staff, for all their contributions to this meeting. I don't know. We look to the left too. We see all of our staff here. I think they've done a excellent job. The amount of work that's gone into this meeting is extraordinary. I reiterate what I've said before about having them step up, present at the table, be part of the team. I believe has been a real contribution to the quality of our sessions, and everyone's passing the test with flying colors. So there's no doubt that practice is going to continue going forward. I don't know, Michael or Jim, if you want to make any closing observations before we bring the entire meeting to a close.
Don't have too much to add, but I think it was a very good meeting this week, and it was good to see active, lively discussion around the board table. Encourage that to continue and for people to speak up. There were some times that some prodding seemed necessary to get things going, but people did respond along the way, so that was good. And also continue. I encourage you to continue thinking about ways to perhaps innovate in the work processes of the board going forward. Some of those were highlighted by Lynn with respect to the work of the Sustainability Assurance Working Group, and some good ideas there. Also could draw on some of the findings on technology and think about ways that technology might be used more fully to help the board in its own work.
Great. Jim?
Thanks, Tom. And I was thinking some of the themes that kept on recurring through this meeting. And one, in part, I got a new iPad, and then I had to go through I don't know how many pages before I pressed agreed. And my point in saying that is I didn't read any of them. And I think that is something that the CAG has talked about in terms of the auditor's report. And we often have to balance the public interest for what we put in the auditor's report. But at the end of the day, I think there's some things that if they're boilerplate, that's an issue because you end up just flipping through them. And I know that's been a topic of discussion. And the other topic that we've talked about thematically is what's in and what's out on the ICEs as it pertains to LCEs and sustainability. And I'll just reflect on some of the discussions in the CAG on that. And specifically, the whole reason we were doing the LCEs is there was, I think, a sense on the CAG by the CAG members that a lot of the application guidance was very prescriptive, and the big sell for having an LCE was maybe let's focus on just the requirements, and so I think you're going to get into a challenge trying to decide what's in and what's out, because I don't think that will work. But maybe it's looking more at what are just the true requirements, and that might help you move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Billy, would you like to share some of your parting thoughts?
Well, Tom, maybe just from my side, also thank you very much to my staff team. I think, excellent work effort and commitment during Q3 in the lead up to this meeting. And then obviously to all of you for your participation in task forces, working groups, outreach, and to contribute to a very effective and constructive meeting this week. Thank you.
Okay, any board member wish to raise anything before we close? Bill?
Yesterday, I thought it was a good move when we brought sustainability forward in the agenda. I know you're conscious of observers on YouTube. Is there a way we can be better at, if we get ahead of schedule, we can bring items forward and change I don't know, I think you said a Twitter no doubt or something, wasn't the Twitter? So I ask that you consider whether that is possible going forward.
Yeah, we're definitely considering timetables going forward and what we could do. Any other observations? Okay, I'll just close by thanking everyone for your participation, but more importantly, your service to this board. I can't thank you enough for the amount of hours and time and dedication you put to this effort. It's really vital to the global economy. So thank you. Have a safe trip home. Thank you for those who are continuing working this week on task force and working groups, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you.